In the stillness of the Idaho mountains awaits a long-range shooting experience unlike any other. I stood there, awestruck by the beauty, trembling with excitement. This is the Whipper, the ultimate long-range shooting experience. Towering mountain ridges, extreme up and downhill angles that will push your limits. The wind tries to hijack your every shot. The altitude steals your breath. The endless landscape reminds you of just how small you really are. You must adapt, or it will break you. This course will force you to rethink everything you know about long-range shooting. Build your position. Acquire your target. Calm your breath and read the wind. Then, slowly press the trigger. In that single moment, impossible distances collapse to mere inches. Feel the recoil hammer through you at altitude. Watch impacts connect and explode on steel across the canyon.
Pack.
This isn't like any other range day you've ever had.
Pack.
This is a long-range shooter's paradise, where you will step far outside your comfort zone and learn the skills necessary to become a true long-range asset. From sprawling canyons all the way to door-off helicopter runs, you'll push your skills further than you ever have before. Heart pounding, focus locked. Every miss a lesson, every hit a reward. By the end of this course, you'll walk off that mountain a sharper, smarter, and more capable long-range shooter, with friends and memories branded on your soul forever. In this full review, I'm breaking down exactly what you can expect when you attend the Whipper course. The challenges, the breakthroughs, and everything in between. Buckle up. Epic is an understatement. What is happening, all of you sexy warriors out there? Welcome back to the channel. I know that was a pretty epic intro, and yes, that was my voice. However, I do believe the Whipper course justifies such an epic introduction because it was the coolest shooting experience I've ever had in my life, and I don't say that lightly. So let's go ahead and jump right into the review of the Western Practical Precision Rifle class. But before we could dive into the full review of the Whipper course, we first have to thank the company that made it all possible, which is Griffin Armament. They are the title sponsor of the event, and they made that helicopter ride and many of the other things possible. Although I am not associated with the Whipper course, that is Zach's baby. I'm not an instructor. I'm not making any money off of it whatsoever. I do want to give a huge shout out to Zach from Mountains Malts America for inviting me out so that I can give you guys an unbiased review of what to expect in this course. Now, with that being said, another thing I want to cover before we get into the curriculum and how day 1, day 2, and day 3 went, I just want to mention that the communication was absolutely phenomenal from Zach and his whole team, as well as the accommodations and the lodging at the Day Mountain Resort and Ranch were absolutely top-notch, second to none. It was like being in a ski town. It was absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't believe how beautiful the lodging was there. Out of all of the places I've went and stayed and shot, that was by far the nicest. And not to mention, obviously, the beautiful mountains at the Day Mountain Ranch that allowed us to get a lot of those incredibly high and low angle shots and long range shots as well. So nothing but good things to say as far as the communication goes and the lodging. Last thing I'll mention is the food that was provided and included in the course fee was absolutely phenomenal as well. Every morning they cooked breakfast fresh, and they brought in lunch and dinner, and everything we had was really, really delicious. So now that we kind of covered that stuff, let's get into day 1 in the curriculum. So the main purpose of this video is to let you guys know what you can expect, the major takeaways, the challenges, and the breakthroughs that I had during this Whipper class from day 1 through day 3. So what can you expect when you sign up for Whipper? When you show up on day 1 is all about truing your rifle and making sure that all of your information, all of the inputs into the gun are accurate. So the first half of day 1 was focused on zeroing the rifle, ensuring that you have a solid zero, making sure that your scope is mounted properly, there's no loose nuts or bolts. Then they allow time for everyone to chronograph their rifles to understand the type of data and the type of speeds they're getting out of the ammunition that they brought with them to the class. And all of this fundamental stuff is extremely important once you start to get out to longer ranges, especially at unknown distance ranges. If you're working on your fundamentals, you're working on your math and being able to range things, whether you're using electronics or doing it manually, which we did in the class as well, all of these fundamentals must be solid. Otherwise, you're not going to know what variable it might be that's throwing you off target. And it may not be your positional shooting. It may not be your poor wind call. It might just be that your zero is not dialed in just right. So the second half of day one, we got into positional shooting work, and this is where I really started to learn a lot from the instructors. I want to give a huge shout out to Justin Jackson. He is the Mormon Marauder on YouTube as well as Instagram, and as well as Nick, the other instructor who were there participating and teaching the class alongside Zach from Mountains Malts America. Justin did a lot of really good teaching on the second half of day one about how to build a solid foundation behind a different barricade, depending on whether you're shooting off of a tripod, different types of barricades, different levels of a barricade usage, whether you're on the top rung of a barricade or a lower rung, how to build that position the best way possible and utilize the tools at your disposal to get in the most solid shooting position so that you can achieve a solid sight picture. But not only that, but you can actually trace your impacts and trace your misses and get that data and collect it and use it for your next shot. Now, it was on day one that I actually was able to reach out further than I've ever shot in the past to 1,160 meters or 1,260 yards off of a low rung of a barricade using a tripod rear support and get several impacts in a row at an 1,160 meter target, which is pretty incredible, especially considering the furthest I'd ever shot before this class was 1,000 yards, and that was off my belly in the prone position, which we all know is the most stable shooting position. It's a lot easier to shoot in the prone, and a lot of people will show up at PRS matches, myself included, with a inflated sense of capability because you shoot up the prone all the time, and then once you're put in that adverse position, whether it be a tank trap, a barricade, whatever it might be, it's a much different story, and that wobble zone goes from a very tiny little wiggle on the target to a much wider area. And through their instruction, I was able to learn how to mitigate that wobble zone and also be able to have a solid position so that under recoil, I can still track my impacts, track my misses, and then correct based off of the information I'm receiving downrange.
1160.
Good job, dude. That was pretty sick.
Thanks, bro.
Plus, like watching your trace, just like bam, bam.
Now, this is obviously a very high-level explanation of what we learned on day one. There's a ton of little tidbits that are sprinkled in throughout the day that I'm not going to really get into in an effort to keep this video under an hour long. Now, I would be remiss not to mention that this entire class is very laid back. Although the information that we were getting is very serious and high level, most of the guys in the class are from a civilian background, and a lot of these guys just came out to meet Zach and have a good time and become better shooters. And that vibe really echoed throughout the class. There was no one taking themselves too seriously. Everybody was there just to help each other get better. And these guys did an amazing job of teaching the information in a very digestible way, but that didn't make them unapproachable. They were still very quick to come up and help people ask questions. Is everybody understanding this topic before we move on, which goes a long way for me as a student. So day one was mostly just dialing in your fundamentals and then starting to learn how to build a solid foundation for positional work, because that was actually the last day we ever spent on the flat range. And every day after that, day 2 and day 3, we were on the terrain, the natural terrain on the Day Mountain Ranch, which was unbelievable, obviously, as you guys can see from the footage. Now, after the positional shooting, the fun on day 1 did not end there. We all went to the horse barn where we ate dinner together. And then afterwards, a bunch of guys, myself included, went back to the flat range to shoot some long range night vision content, which was absolutely unbelievable. One of the guys even connecting at 1,000 meters under night vision, which was phenomenal. And using Zach's MRGGS with his clip-on PVS-30, I was also able to connect at about 500 yards, which was pretty cool under night vision. Definitely the furthest I've ever shot at dark. Now, for full disclosure, the rifle I was using in this course does belong to Zach from Mountains Malts America. It is his Geisley MRGGS. And the thing was set up absolutely perfectly for this type of situation. At the front, we were using a Griffin Armament can. Again, a huge shout out to Griffin for providing that can to us for that review. It's also rocking the MazTech on top, which is a laser aiming module. It allows for very quick and easy ranging of targets. It gives you your ballistic data right there on the top of the screen, and you can make your adjustments either dialing or holding over in the optic. The optic we were running was a Leupold Mark 5 HD 5-25 with a Horus Tremor 3 reticle. That was all sitting inside of a Badger Condition 1 mount. And we were shooting the Phantom Defense M1200 140 grain hollow tip bullets, which performed phenomenally well, grouping about a 0.8 MOA at 100 yards, which is phenomenal for a 5-round group. And that was a very quick and hasty zero since I got to the class a little bit late. So I just shot that really quickly. and I was very happy with the performance. The extreme spread was about 32 FPS, and the average was running about 2760 feet per second, which is pretty phenomenal for a 140 grain pill out of a 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor barrel. A little surprise that Zach had sprinkled into the mountainside on day one was a little hidden communist. And this was a little bonus target that if you were able to spot the communist and impact it, you had 2 tries after you sighted it. If you were able to impact the target on day one, you would get a 40% discount on a trigger tech trigger. And this goes into the theme overall of the class. There were a ton of giveaways for the mini competition on day 3, which we'll get into in a moment. But throughout the class, there was a little challenge and it kept the competition up, kept everybody excited. There was also another little mini competition built into day 1 called the Humble You Drill. But it's where you go from a standing position on a tripod to a kneeling position to a seated position, all off a tripod, then to the prone, but you're holding in the same place. You have the same exact hold at 100 yards from each position. And the key is to get you to understand how your positional work might need some help and where you really achieve the best accuracy. Now, obviously, myself and everybody else shoots best off the prone position, but I was pretty surprised to how widespread my group was. I think it was about a 2.8-inch group, which did surprise me because I'm used to shooting sub-inch groups. Now, after our night shoot on day 1, we all went back, went to bed, and we got up bright and early, 7:30 for breakfast, and we had a classroom portion on wind. Nick taught the wind clinic, and it was extremely intricate and very interesting. A lot of it was looked at from a meteorological perspective. He liked to equate wind to fluid dynamics like water, and that really helped me visualize it. The way I started seeing it was I started seeing the atmosphere, the sky as the ocean, and we're sitting here at the bottom of the ocean, and how wind currents work coming up and over, learning about eddies, learning about all the different things that wind does, especially in the southern Idaho environment where the class was located. That's really what the wind was focused on because that's where we were training at. And that is what we were going to see when we went out into the environment in the field. So we spent about 2 hours in the classroom while eating breakfast, learning about wind. And then we went out and spent the rest of the day shooting extremely high up angles and down angles from different positions on the mountain. Now, the start of shooting on day 2 was very cool for me because I was able to actually connect on the first round on a cold bore impact at 850 yards at a 25-degree up angle while I was sitting on the side of a mountain off of a tripod. Now, this may not seem very impressive to a lot of people who've never shot in this type of position or these ranges, but I tell you right now, it is very rare for me as a shooter to achieve a first round cold bore impact. So that was really, really cool. Also, we took all of the principles from day 1, obviously learning about the dope and all that stuff and making sure our rifles were trued and zeroed, but also mostly the positional work and how to build a solid foundation. Because when you're sitting on a sloped angle, shooting up at a sloped angle, that is a much different scenario than being proned out with a bipod and a rear bag. So you have to be creative in the way that you set yourself up so that you can get a stable sight picture. But not only that, you can get a solid foundation behind the rifle so that if you do miss, you can spot your miss and then correct your reticle to that location and get that second round impact. So even though I was shooting off of a tripod, I was using things like fallen limbs to brace my legs. I got a log that was just sitting on the mountainside and actually put it underneath my elbow. And I got to the point where I was so steady that you can actually see my heartbeat in the reticle, which I didn't realize until later. That was actually my heartbeat. And guys are asking, why is your heart beating so fast? I'm like, well, 5,000 feet of elevation and hiking up a mountain will do that to you boys. So very, very cool shooting up angle stuff there. There were 2 positions on the mountain that we hiked between. I started at the lower position and then I worked my way up to the higher position. The lower position was definitely more of an extreme angle. And then moving up to the higher position on the mountain, it was very much more the same, just a little bit less of an angle, a little bit of a different look at the same array of targets, but still very fun to shoot at. Now, the entire time we're on the mountainside shooting all this up angle stuff, all the instructors are there spotting, helping us call wind, helping us diagnose issues or get better shooting positions. So very, very cool to actually work within the environment that is more realistic, especially in that course. Now, after shooting all the up angle stuff, we moved our way up to the watchtower, which was further up the mountain. And from this watchtower, we're able to actually shoot 360 degrees at a massive array of targets from anywhere from 600 yards all the way out to a mile, which was pretty incredible. I started up there at the watchtower and I used several different positions. I shot off a tripod at first. Then I moved to a bag on the rail with a tripod rear support and just learning how down angle affects bullets differently than up angle, obviously, and still being able to build those positions. Just from what I learned on day 2, I will say down angle seemed to be a little bit harder for me as my build goes. My back was getting pretty tight, getting pretty sore versus kind of laid back on the mountainside. Shooting up angle stuff was a lot more comfortable for me, but the down angle stuff was a little bit more of a challenge, and it tells me I have something I need to work on right there. And just like any good instructor and course, this course is not going to make you a better shooter in the 3 days that you're there. What it's going to do is teach you what you need to work on and where your shortcomings are so that you can work on it when you get back home at your main range or during dry fire or whatever it might be. But I will say, by taking some of the things that they taught me on day one and actually incorporating it into day two, I did become better while I was there. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things you can improve on and fine tune and refine and make them become second nature so you don't have to think about them so much, that in the future, when you're going to get in a shooting position, you just automatically do it instead of having to think about it. After my group wrapped up at the mountain, we moved to a different position on the side of the mountain where Justin from the Mormon Marauder channel was sitting, where we had a different look at some downward target arrays, shooting down into a different mountain valley so we can get a different read on the wind and a different perspective, a different change the environment a little bit, kind of take you out of your element. And now instead of shooting off of a well-manicured platform with a rail, now we're back onto a mountainside shooting down angle stuff, which was pretty challenging. And again, from this position, they hid the commie. And once again, you had one shot this time because it was a little bit closer than it was on day one. And a couple guys actually were able to spot the commie and impact him and win a couple 40% off coupons for the Trigger Tech triggers. Once we wrapped up at Justin's station at station 2, we had a little bit of downtime, which I will say, a huge shout out to these guys. There was very little downtime throughout the course. Only in this circumstance, we had to wait for the guys to stop shooting at the tower to make it safe for us to drive back and regroup with everybody. So we had a little bit, probably like 20 minutes of downtime between that second station and getting back down the mountain. And that is where I got a lot of this amazing B-roll footage from the Day Mountain range of the MRGGS, this amazing 10 out of 10 bleed out spot. Absolutely breathtaking. And obviously I had no problem with the downtime, being able to see that view and capture some content for you guys with that background. Now, after they shuttled us back up to the watchtower, there was a third position that I actually just ended up skipping because I was pretty tired. And I wanted to get ready for arguably the coolest part of the class in the weekend, which was the doors off helicopter ride, where we got to shoot out of the helicopter at 3 different positions at a whole slew of target arrays. Now, this was just absolutely amazing. And from the first guy taking off to me, the last guy coming back, everybody was absolutely hyped. And this was actually a secret that Zach kept from the class. And now the secret is out, in fact, because he wanted to surprise everybody who signed up for the course. And he let them know at the end of day one. But needless to say, it did not disappoint. And our helicopter pilot, Will, was absolutely phenomenal. He was one of the best helicopter pilots in the country. And he really did make it an incredible experience, which was unbelievable. I got to say, that's a bucket list item checked off the list right there. Now, obviously, shooting an MRGGS out of a helicopter, a little bird, isn't the most comfortable or practical solution. This is one of the biggest points of feedback that I gave Zach. I told him next time we need a Lima 6 belt fed out of there that needs to be mounted up and have an FRT in it, and that'll make that experience totally different. Maybe even a few large tannerite targets down on the mountainside as well. One of the biggest takeaways from day 2 that I already told Zach about is the fact that I think there should have been some confidence targets out there at the downward angle from the watchtower. Now, I know the whole idea is setting up a solid position so you could spot your impacts, your misses, and track your trace. However, on one target in particular, I wasted a lot of ammunition and I did not know where I was missing. In fact, I think I probably shot about 30 rounds at it and I connected like 4 or 5 times. And every time I connected, I held the same hold. And for whatever reason, I couldn't connect again and I couldn't see where I was missing. So I had advised him that it would be beneficial to have like a 4x4 still plate out there just for people to know, okay, this is kind of where I'm at, to get their idea before they waste a whole bunch of ammo and don't see any splash whatsoever. They don't get any feedback from the dirt, and then you're just wasting a bunch of ammo and get a little discouraged. So that was the one piece of feedback that I had from day 2. So obviously the helicopter takes the cake for excitement. It was absolutely phenomenal. On the way back, Will was just absolutely bobbing and weaving through the canyons. We were like 20 feet above the treetops. It was pretty incredible. In fact, it was like a little roller coaster with guns. So I cannot say enough good things about the helicopter experience. That was absolutely the chef's kiss. After we all landed from the helicopter rides, we all went and hung out at the horse barn, which was really fun. We watched some basketball, watched a UFC fight while I was going over content. I ended up airplaying to the TV and showing everybody their own helicopter runs, which was pretty cool. We mounted up a GoPro just above the door so everyone could have a POV view of their shooting. And all around, everyone was just on cloud 9 that night. It was a really fun time. Now, moving on to day 3, we all started off in the classroom again while eating breakfast. And Zach kind of took the reins on this one. Day 3, he discussed rapid engagement techniques, max point blank range, speed drop, milling targets with your reticle, and then they also had a 5-stage mini match, which unfortunately I was not able to stay for. I had to get out of there. My flight was a little early, so that was the unfortunate part. I wasn't able to stay for the match, but the first half of the day and what I did stay for was extremely informational. Zach was actually able to teach me, which is not an easy thing to do, how to mill targets with my reticle, how to find out what your speed drop is, your max point blank range, all this information on a rifle that was completely foreign to me. This is his gun. I don't own another 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor gun, so very cool that he was able to convey that in such a short amount of time. And then we were able to actually go back out to the flat range and put that into practice. We did a bunch of milling. We did a bunch of ranging of targets with our reticles. We all talked through it as a class. And in fact, there was one last little mini competition for a unknown distance target. They did not allow any laser rangefinders, obviously. We all had to mill it and do our calculations and guess. And whoever guessed closest to the actual range of the target won a Trigger Tech trigger. Someone won a free Trigger Tech trigger right there, which is pretty cool. The second part of day number 3, which I was not there for, they had a mini match. The whole idea was to take everything you learned on day 1 and day 2 and then apply a little bit of pressure, whether it be the timer, your own mentality because you're in a competition, or versus your peers. A little bit of friendly competition never hurt anybody. And so kind of take that, what you learned when you had all the time in the world and everybody helping you out, and now apply it to a place where you're on a timer, there's a point system, and everybody's watching. So that's kind of the idea, is to kind of tie it all together and put you to the test. Like I mentioned, there was a huge prize table. One of the biggest prizes, I believe, was the Leupold. They had an entire optic there, a brand new Mark V, I believe it was. There were also prize items from Sierra, Maztec, Trigger Tech, MDT, Night Force, Vectronics, Mile High, Silencer Shop, Rotopoint, and Phantom Defense. Whether it be just ammo or merch or swag, so be it, right? I got a bunch of shirts, including the Whipper shirt, while I was out there. So very generous with the swag while we were out there. But there were some real prizes on that prize table as well. And the first place guy won an actual Leupold scope, which is pretty badass. Now, on top of the absolute banger of a location, the banger of an experience with a helicopter flight and just shooting in like the most gorgeous mountain terrain you've ever seen, the camaraderie is something that is really hard to come across on the camera. And I got to know these guys on a deep and serious level, which was very, very cool. I know a lot of you guys out there, myself included, are kind of missing that aspect from our lives. As a man, how often do you get asked how you're actually doing and have someone there to actually listen to you and help you through the things you're going through? So that is a part that I think is extremely underrated in all these classes, but this one especially, when you're spending multiple nights at an amazing location like this, to get to know people and actually build that community and have those guys and have those friendships for the rest of your life. That is something that will stay with me forever, even just as much as the helicopter ride and shooting further than I've ever shot before and all the cool shit I did. One of the coolest things was the guys that I met along the way. So I want to give a big shout out to everyone who attended the class, all the hospitality. Thank you guys so much for being so cool and making that such an amazing experience for me. So finally, in conclusion, do I recommend the Whipper course to anyone who is considering it? And the answer is a resounding yes. There is no doubt in my mind that it is worth the value. It is definitely not a cheap course. However, it is worth every single penny. The lodging was phenomenal. The food was phenomenal. The coursework, the curriculum, and the location, unbelievable. I mean, second to none. And also the little pizzazz factor that Zach added in with an epic helicopter run was pretty freaking epic. So epic is an understatement. I know I said that in the intro, but it is the truth. Epic really is an understatement. There's no words that can describe the high that I felt, even days after leaving there, because that was just such an amazing experience. And I recommend it to literally anyone and everyone who is considering it, who likes to shoot long range. There was all different price categories of rifles there. You don't need to have an expensive gun. You just need to have the will and the want to learn and become a better shooter and to have one of the coolest long range experiences known to mankind at this moment. That is my humble opinion. It doesn't get better than the Whipper course. It might just get different, but it definitely doesn't get better. But that is gonna wrap it up and put the bow on this most awesome experience that is Whipper. Guys, thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. If you're considering it, do it, pull the trigger. You will not be disappointed. It is 100% worth the money and the time it takes to get out there. I recommend it to everybody. And in fact, I'm planning on going back for the next one. Hopefully, if I'm invited again, I would love to be there. And as always, Christ is King. Stay safe, stay dangerous, range day, bro. Out.
Pack.